Alright guys, so today we're going to go through fitting the boosterless master cylinder kits on the Commodores that we do and explain why we do it and the advantages. So in this car we've got an LSA supercharged 6.2 litre genuine Holden engine. You obviously don't have any vacuum or little vacuum with the supercharger running, and this one's actually got a fairly decent cam in it as well, so not producing the vacuum that required to run the booster itself without running a vacuum pump, which we don't really want to do. And also there's usually a clearance issue with number 8 coil if you want to keep them in the standard position. So we're going to go through, remove the factory stuff. We're going to have to get some lines fabricated because the actual genuine lines won't match up to our Wilwood master cylinder kit. So we're just going to take you through it all and show you how we do it. Okay, so we've got our suck bottle here. We're just going to suck the fluid out of it so we don't leak fluid all through the engine bay and start peeling paint off, and undo some bolts and we'll remove the factory one. Okay, so we're in the car now. We've got to get up under the dash here, disconnect the factory clevis off the back of the booster and undo the 2 bolts that hold the booster on. Then we should be able to clear the booster completely out of the engine bay. The master's already gone, and then we can start fitting up our Wilwood unit. So in your kit you would have got a firewall adapter to suit the Wilwood master cylinder. It's got rod shot that goes to the top, and one side's got the angle on the back of it machined so it suits the firewall, and the flat goes to the front to suit the master cylinder. So this just goes to where your booster's been removed previously. You'll probably need 2 people to do this so you can get someone to hold it in position while you're up under the dash to put the bolts in it. So we've got the bracket loosely fitted to the firewall at the moment. So your master cylinder and your clevis that comes in the kit. So you want to put the master cylinder on first. You might take 2 people again just so they can support it whilst you're in under the dash to screw the clevis on. Always make sure your clevis is facing down on a Commodore, and make sure once you're all set and everything's mounted up firm, your clevis and your push rod is sitting square. You don't want your push rod running on any angle at all, or it'll stuff your master cylinder, it'll start leaking fluid. Before we fit the master cylinder up, we've got our Pro Valve mounting kit and Pro Valve here, so we'll loosely fit this up too so we can put it all together at the same point, and then we'll feed her into the car. Delicious. Okay, so we've had our brake lines fabricated. We're going to remove the master cylinder from the car now and bench bleed it and show you how we do that properly. And then we're going to fit it back to the car and we'll bleed the whole brake system up. And hopefully that's one thing we can tick off the board. Alright, so when you get your master cylinder, you would have received a bleed kit with it and 2 different sorts of adapters to go in here. So we're going to use the appropriate one of these and the 2 lines to bleed it back into the master cylinder. As we pump this push rod in, it'll obviously push the bubbles back into the fluid and get all the air out of the system. So we'll do that and show you how to do it. Okay, so our bleed kit's fitted and the master's full of fluid. So we're going to start bleeding it now just by slowly pushing the push rod in till it bottoms and releasing it very slowly, because if you do it quick it'll just pick up air. You see all the bubbles coming out, so it's doing what it's meant to be doing. Just continue this until there's no bubbles left. And when you think you've got it, do it a couple more times, because you'll always seem to find more. Make sure you're releasing the push rod all the way so it's not holding pressure on it.
Five minutes later.
So I've been at this probably for about 5 minutes now, just slowly pushing in and out, and every time you think you've got it right, it'll always seem to drag up more air from somewhere. But you want to make sure you've got it right, because if you don't get it right and put it on the car, it might be okay for a little bit, but then you'll end up with complaints like having a hard pedal or harder than average pedal, or the brakes don't feel like they're going to stop the car, which is usually the case that the master cylinder hasn't been bench bled properly or not bench bled at all.
Fifteen minutes later.
So we've been doing this for about 15 minutes now, and every time you think you get there and have it right, it always seems to find some more somewhere.
Like that.
Like that, yep. And that.
Eventually.
Now I believe we've got it. So about time to transfer it to the car. I'll take it over with these lines and stuff in position, bolt the master onto the car, and then undo them and put the lines in, and then we'll continue to bleed the rest of the system now the master cylinder's bleed. And just while you're doing it, keep nipping these red or whatever coloured adapter you use, because they tend to start leaking, and just nip them up as you go. Now when we put them in the car, you're going to take the clevis off, because the clevis doesn't fit through the block, so you need to screw the clevis on up under the dash. Right, we've got the master cylinder on the car now, so I'm just going to remove the rear one first and hook up the rear line off the pro valve, and then do the same to the front one. Just leave the front one in place while I'm doing it, trying to minimise the amount of fluid that comes out of it if possible. Might make it easier to bleed up when you get to it. Just leave that semi-loose so you can try and get the front line in. Do it up too tight, you would just be fighting it. So you can suck your master cylinder somewhat, like mostly dry, and remove these fittings because you've bled the actual master cylinder, not the brake system. So it shouldn't, unless you push that push rod in, it won't attract any air into the system. Well, minimal air, I should say. So when you bleed the rest of the brakes, it'll remove the air from that bit of the system. I've done it the way I did, just as it was a little bit quicker and easier, and the engine bay in this car's not the prettiest anyway. Our master cylinder's now fitted up, it's all plumbed up, we've been under the dash and we've hooked the pedal up. Make sure when you're doing this that the clevis faces down, not up on a Commodore, and make sure your push rod's running square into the back of your master cylinder, otherwise you'll end up with seal failure in the master cylinder. So we've bled the brakes up, took bugger all really, a couple of blokes, about 5 minutes on it, seeing if we bled the master cylinder up, so it's all pretty good. Now it's time to bed the brakes in, so we'll put the wheels on and take the car for a drive.